If you've worked at all with forms in Acrobat, you probably know that text fields have an incredible number of options and attribute choices for shaping up the form fields, more so than any other field type in Acrobat. There are 8 different tabs in the text field properties, and each one of them have many different options choices. So what I'd like to do in this video is to demystify creating text fields and setting all the attribute options and some things that you may not be aware of that Acrobat can do for you. So let's begin by taking a look at the field properties. I'm going to number of fields on this form right here, and I'm going to begin by opening up the text field properties. Now, the very first thing that you notice when you create a form field, or when Acrobat creates one for you, is the form field name. And I can't stress enough the importance of making sure that you name your fields properly. Do not include spaces. If you need to have more than one word for the form field name, then use camel case. That would be an uppercase character each time the word changes. And when it's necessary for tables and columns and rows and things of that sort, you definitely want to use parent-child names separated by a period. For example, QTY for quantity.0, QTY.1, QTY.2, etc., etc. That's a parent-child relationship. So once we name the field, you come down and note that under form field here, we can make the form visible. That's the default. Obviously, you won't want most of your form fields visible. If you open up this drop-down menu, you can see that you can make a field hidden, and there are some times where you may want to hide a field just to be a placeholder for some data that you want to access by using another field to call upon it. You can have a form visible, but you can instruct Acrobat not to print field data. You can hide a field, but then you can print the field data. So these are 4 different options that you have for viewing fields in Acrobat. Well, also the orientation 0 by default is just a straight up and down view of a form field. As you type, you would see it normally as you would type in any word processor or any other document. But we can rotate form fields. You can see on this form right here, I have one that's rotated 90 degrees. You have some options over here like read only. Read only means that the form filler cannot access the field contents. They can't type in data in the field. It's just visible and no one can get to it unless they break the security or take off the read only checkbox. Required means that if you're going to submit a form, then you check all the fields that are required for a form filler to fill out. If one of those fields are not completed, then Acrobat will prevent the form field from exercising a submit form action to submit the form electronically. And then we have locked. Locked is handy if you want to lock a field in place. I create some different kinds of designs that I use button faces for, and they appear off the page and I don't want them moved, so I just click on locked and no one can move that field in Acrobat. So let's go over to appearance now, and notice that if I don't have a field over here, let's say that this field I delete, and I don't have a field here. If I create a new field, then I would want to set some appearance attributes. So let me do that real quick here. I can either click or click and drag to create the field. And let's go up to all properties. Once again, the first thing you do is set the name, so I'll call this appearance to match my title over here. I can also put a tooltip in, and that means that when the cursor hovers over the field, the tooltip pops up and the form filler can see the tip. Maybe it's instructions on what to do with the form field, or the structure of the data that should be typed in. For example, a date field, maybe you want to put MMDDYYYY for the syntax that would be appropriate for a date field, things of that sort. It's not necessary, but sometimes it can add a little polish to your form fields. Then on appearance, since this form field doesn't have any kind of a border that's in the background, as I have with some of these other fields, as you can see, then we want to make it visible to the form filler that there is a form field there, and they need to click the cursor within the boundary of that form field in order to access it. So to do that, I'll click on border color here, and I'll click on black. Now on the Macintosh, you get a palette that opens, and you have to dismiss the palette before you can continue. So be aware of that. On Windows, you just choose a border color. Notice that if I click on no color here, I cannot access thin or solid, and the options underneath these drop-down menus, such as bevel and some other options. So you must have something here for the color or the fill color in order for these two items to be accessible. So I can change this thickness, I can change the type of border that I want, dashed, beveled, inset, underline, what have you. And then I can also choose a fill color. And once again, it would just be clicking a color, and that would be to occupy the fill. And this form, we'll just leave it as transparent. Next is the font size. Now, if you take a look at the drop-down menu here, if Acrobat creates the form fields for you, then it will use auto for the size of the font. And I don't really recommend you do that. Auto means that as the field size grows, as you size it up, then the text or the font inside that field is also going to proportionately grow. And I find it best if you just set a value that you want to have for all your fields, and that way if there's a little bit of difference in the size of the field, at least the type will appear a lot neater and the design will appear much better. So it's up to you, but I would choose a fixed value. On font, one thing to be aware of when you choose fonts is that at the very top of the font list, you see you have a number of fonts, and then you see this line. Anything above the line is what I would recommend you use for any of your fonts, because everything below the line is what I have installed on my individual computer. And if this form is shared with other users, they may not have the font that I choose below the line. So it's limited to 4 fonts. You've got Helvetica, Courier, Times New Roman, and Symbol, but it's not really a huge choice of fonts. But for filling out forms, Helvetica I find is really a good font to use. A sans serif font usually works pretty well on screens. So next we'll go to position over here, and what position has to do with is the actual position of the field. Notice that, see the values here. Watch when I move this field to a different location. You can see the numbers change, and these are the XY coordinates of where that field is placed. You really wouldn't go in and change any of these. Typically, I wouldn't find any reason to do that, but what it is good for is you can assess the coordinates of a field, and if you write a JavaScript to create a field, which you can do, then you would ahead of time know what those coordinates are. So it's very helpful. It's informational, and it can be a help if you have any kind of script that creates a field for you. And then we move to options. Now, the first option up here is alignment. You'll notice that I have some calculations down here in this table. I've got calculate as the title over here. I've got a total column. Well, if I click on one of these fields, you'll notice that I have these aligned right. So number fields, you typically want to do that. You might have some fields that you want to align center, and a good number of fields that you want to align left. You can type in a default value so that if the field is viewed on screen, the form filler will see a default, and then if they need to override that, they can just type over it and that default disappears. Now, I'm going to go down this list here, and the first item is fields used for file selection. Most people probably don't know what that means. And to explain this a little bit further, I'm going to open up my third page in this document. And this is where I explain that option. The way you would enable that field, first of all, is you have to disable all your check marks with the exception of scroll long text. When you click on scroll long text, this field becomes accessible and you can enable it. And it says field is used for file selection. And really what this is it's a field where if you have a button field that exercises a JavaScript, and here's the JavaScript that I would put in such a field, and that is contained in this button here, and here's my field. It will then open up a dialog box and ask you to select a file. And what this is designed for is for a user to send a file to accompany the form. And you might use this for purposes such as I have up here described. An example might be a receipt that needs to accompany a refund form. And another use might be one for authentication of a document, such as a photo of yourself holding up a passport or a driver's license. And the host doesn't want to use an embedded photo in the form. They want to have a separate document. And that's what it's for. It's basically a file attachment. So when I come over here to, let's go over here to, I'll go to this appearance over here, and I go to options. You see this field is grayed out. If I click, I take out the check spelling. Scroll along text needs to be checked in this field. And when it is checked, then you can select field is used for a file selection. I have this document uploaded to my server, so you can follow the instructions on this third page here, and you can see how this can be of some benefit when you want to submit or design a form that a form filler submits a second file along with the form. The next one is password. Now, password, when this is checked, all it means is when the form filler types in this field, they're just going to see a bunch of asterisks, and the data, the typed characters are not going to be visible. So if I type in this field, you can see, oops, I didn't type in the right field. Let's go up to password. There we go. And you can see that those are asterisks. So that's quite simply how password works. The next option is check spelling, and for most of the fields where you theoretically would have spelling checked, you can enable that if you want it. If you want Acrobat to change the spelling as form fillers fill in fields, and then they can see if they have any spelling errors and correct those. The next option is multi-line, and that's what I have over here. If I click in this field right now, this is a large text box. You see the cursor goes to the middle, and if I just type, it's going to go and extend and not wrap around. And so multi-line is the feature that lets you wrap text like that. Okay? Just if you have text boxes that are large and you need to have text scroll and have the reader see all the text, then you probably want to do that. Allow rich text formatting is that RTF files hold formatting that of the host document, especially when you export it. So if you're going to export tables and data to Excel or some other application, then you probably want to use allow rich text formatting. Next we have limit the number of characters. Over here, I'm going to limit this to 10 characters. Well, let's go 5. I'll limit to 5 characters. And we'll go to type in this. Notice that now I can't type anymore. You see, it just limits to the number of characters that can be typed. So if you want a form filler to be restricted to a certain number of characters in a given field, then you can enable that checkbox. The next item is a comb field, and if you're not familiar with comb fields, this is designed as a comb field right here. Either hash box or checkbox type of squares are set up typically on a lot of government documents you see, and they're designed to have a single character placed within the separators. In this case, they're just hash marks. So what you want to do is count the total number of separators that you have, and so you know exactly how long that comb field should be. In this case, it's 10. So I'll go back here, and when you want to enable comb field, you have to disable every other option up here. So I'll disable these items. Now I can go to comb field, and a default is 10, so we'll use that, and you can see that when I type, each one of those characters goes into each one of those cells. So I'm going to come down here. No, I guess we're going to start with actions over here. In this screenshot right here, I have a list of all the actions you can add to a field, and that's under the Actions tab. You have a couple of choices you can make here. Number one is the action that is the mouse trigger, and these are all the different mouse triggers, so that if you invoke an action when the mouse button is released, then the action is invoked. If you click the mouse button down, the action is invoked. If you move the mouse and enter a field, then the action's invoked. And if you exit a field with the cursor, then the action is invoked. On focus and on blur means when you tab into is on focus and you tab out of a field, that's on blur. So most of the actions that people develop are mouse up actions, and that's the default. Then we have this menu that has a huge number of different kinds of actions. You can see over here with execute menu item, there's just a good number of different actions. Most of these are viewing actions. You go to pages and go to certain view zoom levels and things of that sort. And with a text field, it's rare that you would use just about all of these actions except JavaScript. Run a JavaScript, okay? You would use button fields for things like reset a form, read an article, play a sound, open a web link. You could use a text field for open a web link, but most of these others are going to be set up on button fields. The most popular one is run a JavaScript. When I click on run a JavaScript here, then whatever action you select here, there's an add button so that it gets added down here in the actions panel or the actions window. If I click on add, and then here is my JavaScript editor, and I would type the code to enter a JavaScript right there. Okay, so a huge number of actions, and if you poke around and play around with these with button fields, you can see how those actions actually work. Let's now move over to the Format tab. We've finished up the actions, so let me click on Format. What I'll do first of all is select this field right here where it says Format and click on Format. On Format, you have some preset formats that you can choose from. You've got number. We know that we want to choose number particularly when we deal with form field calculations. Percentage, date, time, and then you have special and custom. Now I'm going to hold off on custom for a little bit after I discuss the Calculate tab. but I want to now go to special, and let's select that. And you see that we have a number of different fixed options here for things like zip code, telephone number, and social security number. Those are pretty much self-explanatory. What I want to do now is to talk about arbitrary mask. Arbitrary mask might be a field that you might use for something like, let's say, an employee identification number where you have alphanumeric characters and they should be a fixed size. So the way we deal with this is you can use the letter A to accept all alpha characters, and you can use the number 9 to accept numbers. So let's say that I want the employee to type their own alpha number, so I would choose A. If I use let me go back here and say maybe I'll go S and then A. S means that the S is going to be part of the mask, and A means that the form filler is going to enter an alpha or alpha character in that place. Then I'll put in a dash and I'll go 9999. So basically an employee number might be S and a number of their choosing or something that identifies their department and their own individual employee number. And I click OK, close that, and let's go to this field, and I'm going to type in S, and I'll say G because I can choose my own, a dash, and then 4325. And that would be the number. That would be the arbitrary mask. Just keep in mind an A will allow the form filler to type in any alpha character, and 9999, all the nines will enable someone to choose a specific number of their choosing. If you type in any other value, such as an alpha character other than an A, or a number value other than a 9, then those characters will appear in the field. The form filler will not be able to override those. All right, that takes care of arbitrary mask. Now, I'll go back up here. I've taken care of arbitrary mask. Like I said, we're going to come back in format. I'm going to go back to custom later, where I'll talk about custom format script and custom keystroke script later. And right now, what I'm going to do is go over to the calculate tab. We'll talk about this first, then I'll come back to these and the validate tab as well. So under calculate, you have 3 different kinds of calculations. One is built-in series of calculations. If I go to value and open this drop-down menu, you can see that under this option I have a choice for summing numbers, a product, which is multiplication, average, minimum, and maximum. Those are the built-in formulas. Simplified field notation here is a script that you would write that uses formulas very similar to what you would use in a spreadsheet program. You would use a field name and then use a symbol for the type of calculation that's provided. And then custom JavaScript is a JavaScript. So let's take these one at a time. I'm going to come down to this first total over here in this table at the bottom of the form. And you can see that I have value is the sum, and I have under pick, if I come over and pick the fields that I want to sum, because I named these with parent-child names, you see I have qty.0, qty.1, and then I have total.1 at the bottom. Well, all I have to do is click on qty. That's the item that I click. I don't have to click each individual field to create the sum here. So let's go, I guess I need to go back and do that. So I go over here to qty, and no child name after that, click OK, and that will add the sum. Okay, now we can check this real quick. I can go over here. Let's type in 25 and 15. And you see that my total is summed there at 40. Let's go back and take a look at the next calculation, which is simplified field notation. You see I have simplified field notation. Now, I'll zoom in a little bit so we can see these just a little bit clearer here. So you see that I have a field name price and a field name discount. Under edit, you see that I have the names. Now, what's really important to note is you cannot use parent-child names here. You must use a whole name. It can be an abbreviation or a name, no spaces, and you would identify the fields that you want to use to calculate the formula. So in this case, I have price at the top, and I'm going to subtract discount from it. So over in the built-in calculations, you don't have subtraction or division. So you would use something like simplified field notation or JavaScript to make those calculations. We'll check out this script here. And we've got 100, and I'm going to subtract 25 from that. And you can see that my total down at the bottom here is 75. And that takes care of simplified field notation. So the next option we have is custom calculation JavaScripts. And I have those addressed in the third column over here. So let's take a look at field properties. And I'm going to open up this field called total.3. And we'll go over to the calculate tab. And this is the JavaScript that I created for this column. Okay, so let's go to edit and take a look at the script itself. Now in this script, you'll notice that I have two fields, one called calc.0 and one called calc.1. They appear above the total field right here. And I'm assigning a variable f to calc.0 and a variable g to calc.1. And then I come down and I say, if my variable f, which is calc.0, is not equal to 0, in other words, if there is a value there, then we're going to execute this script. If there's no value there, then we're going to execute this very last line. And in this last line, we have event value is quote, quote, which means nothing. In other words, if there's a default 0 that appears before any calculation is made or any numbers are added within the calculation frame, if that default 0 appears, this is just a way to eliminate those zeros. So what I'm going to do is take a look at the formula here. I say f value, that's calc 0, and I'm going to subtract the g value, which is calc 1. And then I'm going to multiply that times 2. And then all of that is within parentheses here. So that calculation is going to be performed before anything else. I'm going to do the subtraction and multiplication before I do anything else. Then I'm going to take this whole value here. And what I'm going to do is the value that I get from subtracting those and multiplying times 2, I'm going to take 120 away from them. So let's say, for example, I put in 200 in the first field and 100 in the second field. So 100 from 200 leaves 100. And I multiply that times 2, I get 200. And then I subtract 120 from that, my resultant would be 80. So let's see if that works. Cancel this. And what we want to do is preview. I'm going to, once again, I'll just put in 200 like I said. And I'll type in 100, and when I tab out, you can see that I get 80 as the result. And you can see that when you use a calculation formula in JavaScript, you can do so much more. You can write formulas that go well beyond what those simple built-in calculation formulas offer you. And the more you become familiar with that. I do have a video that has a number of different ways to create calculations in my video channel, and if you're interested in doing more with calculations, you may want to take a look at that video. So I've taken care of everything except the format menu over here for custom, which includes custom format scripts and custom keystroke scripts, and the validate tab, which includes also a custom validation script, as well as this radio button option up here. And I'm going to explain all of those, so I want to do that on another page over here. My second page in the document. Once again, this document I'm uploading to the server so you have access to it. Let's go to this field here. You can see that I have these, I format custom scripts and custom keystroke scripts and validation scripts. So I have this broken down into categories. So I'm going to handle the first one in this quadrant in the format menu. So let's double click and go to format, and I'm going to go to custom here. And what I'm going to handle now are custom format scripts, and this has to deal with formatting fields and getting appearances and things like that that you want to have set up on individual fields. In this particular one, I want to create a color change, and I do that with this script. I'm basically going to add this script, and it's going to change the color. 255.255.0 is yellow. So if you don't know exactly what color values are that you need to type in, you can go into a program like Photoshop or Photoshop Elements or any kind of an image editor where they give you readouts on color values, and you can just find the values there. So what happens is, the reason I might do this is because let's say you have a form where you have little contrast between the color, the default color of the form fields, which is a blue value, and the background color, which might be a different shade of blue, and you want to be able to let the form filler clearly see these fields. You might want to employ a color change, and that's what I do here. So let's go ahead and preview, and notice that when I click, the color is going to change. You see it changes to yellow, and if I type in a value here, then you can see that there's a lot of contrast between the color of the type and the color of the field in the background. Okay, that may or may not be a case that you would use very often, but it's there if you ever need it. Let's go back over here. And what I'm going to do is go to this next one. I've got a script in grand total here. Let's take a look at this script. And once again, it's a custom format script. So in this script, what I'm basically going to do is change the appearance on this field where the script is typed. If you have calculations performed in a PDF file, the calculation field sometimes will have a default 0 appear. And if you don't want a 0 to appear on the field, then you can basically use a script to put in nothing in that field. And that's what I have in the last line of code here. Event value is ... And basically I'm saying if the field up here is not equal to 0, then exercise the script. Otherwise, put nothing in the last field. Okay, so let's go to preview, and you can see that I'll type in 100, and what I've done is I've just created a calculation here. However, if I don't put anything there, tab out of it, you can see that a 0 does not appear down here, and that's all that script does. So let's go now to custom keystroke scripts over here. I want to restrict this field value to numbers only. So if I double click, you'll see I've got a custom keystroke script here, and this is the script. You don't really need to understand this if you want to have something similar in your form, all you have to do is copy and paste this script and be certain that you paste it in the right area. In here in the Format tab under Custom and Custom Keystroke Script, that's where you need to put it. So if I come out of this and I try to type in a character here instead of a number, watch what happens. You see I get a dialog box that tells me that that character is not acceptable. So let's go ahead and type in some numbers. You can see that those are accepted fine. And now down here at this field, I have, for the lack of a better term, I just call it default text, but that could be any text that you want the form filler not to disturb. So that text should be something that would just go along with the form. And the reason you have it is in case you export the data, you want to make sure that that data is exported as well. So this could be, let's say you want to run a survey with people in your city, and you want the default value to be your city name. You're not going to accept any forms from people who are outside of your city. So if you type in the city name here and somebody tries to type in something different, let's say I want to type in my city, you can see that I tab out and just click and it returns back to this text. So that's just to override what a form filler might type in that field. We could do this several ways too. You could actually make this field read only and the form filler wouldn't have to do anything, but this is a script that would handle it in case you ever need to have this script in conjunction with anything else. And you don't have to worry about anything, just copy this and paste it. You don't have to change a single value or variable or anything in this script. You can just copy and paste it. This next script requires a little bit more complex coding, and not that you have to do the coding. You can copy and paste the scripts, but it is a little bit more complicated in that it uses two different scripts in two different locations. One of those locations is a document level JavaScript. And the way you access document level JavaScripts is, if you notice in my tool palette over here, I have this JavaScript button. Now, if you don't have this in your palette, then what you want to do is go to More Tools and add it. Or if you just want a one-time use, just double click on it to open it. And once you do click on it, you'll see that at the top toolbar, you have some new tools that are added here. And one of those is Document JavaScripts. That's the item that we want to select. So if I click that, I'm going to open up my Document JavaScripts dialog here. And you see that I have a function called force tab. That's just the name of the function. It could be any name. You could change the name and run the script and everything would be fine. If I click on edit here, this is the script that I use in conjunction with that auto tabbing script, and you don't need to worry about anything about what it does or anything. You can just copy and paste this into a document level JavaScript. Use the word force tab, or you can add a new name and just name it anything you want. The script in the field will not call out the name, but what is important is this word here, this variable go next, okay, or this function. So you want go next to appear here and also in your script on the field. Now if you change this name, you also have to likewise change the name in the field. So I'll cancel out of this, and then let's take a look at the scripts. You see that I have the field names tel.1, tel.2, and tel.3. This is for a telephone number, and when I type in the characters, it's going to auto tab, so I don't even have to strike the tab key. That's all this script does. So let's open this up and take a look at options first. You can see that I restrict this field to 3 characters. The next one over here, I restrict to 3 characters, and the last one, I restrict to 4 characters. And if we take a look at the Format menu on the first field and click on the Edit button to open up the JavaScript editor, you can see quite simply, it's a very, very simple script, but it has to be along with that document level JavaScript. I have go next, which is the function, and I type over here the name of the field I'm going to tab to, which is tell to. And then on the second one, let's go to here, and we'll open this JavaScript up. You can see that this goes to tell 3, and I have tell 3 here. Okay, so let's cancel out of that, and I'll quit this, and we'll go over to preview. We'll click on the first field, and I'm just going to type in 3 characters, 212, and automatically the cursor jumps to the next field. I didn't hit my tab key, I just typed in the values, and I'll go 314. It tabs over to the next field, and then I'll type in 4 characters here. And of course this one is not tabbing anywhere, so it just stays right there. So that's a couple of custom keystrokes you can use. There's just a whole lot of things you can do with those, but it just gives you an idea what they do. Next, we're going to take a look at the Validate tab. I have a script here that I want form fillers who, let's say, reside in a company to identify a day of the week where we're going to assign certain tasks. And it can be any day that's a legitimate work day. And a day that's not a legitimate work day is Sunday, because everybody's off. So they can type in any day of the week that they want except Sunday. So if they type in, let's say, Monday, hit tab key, that's fine. However, if they type in Sunday, and I hit tab, then I get a dialog box and it says that Sunday is not acceptable. Click OK, and it reverts back to what I last entered in the field. And this is what that script looks like. Once again, under the Validate tab, you can see that I have this script. You can basically copy and paste this script into your own form, and the only thing you need to worry about is the name that is going to be the illegal name in the form that you have. You could have a variety of fields that you want people to accept different responses, but the only thing you don't want to have them type in is other. You want them to type in something concrete. So if you substitute this for other, then if they type in other, you get the same dialog box. Okay, so we'll get rid of this, and let's go now down to the next one. I have a script here. In this script, I'm saying that basically if the age is 18, then I'm going to accept the value, and somebody can type in the field above it. If the age is less than 18, let's say it's designed for adults only, then this field is going to be locked and they can't go any farther on that field. So let's see how this works. So I type in, let's say 25, I tab out, and you see that I can add any text that I want in that field. However, if I type a value less than 18, let's say 17, and I tab out, this field is hidden now. You see, I can't access it. Go to Edit menu, and let's take a look at age here. Go over to General, and you can see that it's been hidden. So this is the script that will handle this. Under the Validate tab, we've got, basically I'm getting the value age, and if the value is less than 18, I'm going to hide the field. Quite simply. I have a number over here in this Validate field. I'm going to click on this. This is not really a script, but I have a range that I've identified. I'm only going to accept values between the numbers 20 and 30. So if I click on Preview and I type in 25, no problem. However, if I type in something less than 20 or greater than 30, it's not going to work. So let's type in 17, and a dialog box opens and it says it will not accept that value. And quite simply, you don't even have to worry about a script here, because this is executed by just this radio button and type in the values in these two text boxes here. And the very last script I have here is I'm going to change the color of the field if someone types in a value less than 50. So let's take a look at this script here. Here's the script. And I say that I'm going to get this color field, and if the event value is less than 50, then it's going to be read-only. And it's going to turn this field into a read-only so no one can access the field, and it's going to change the color. Okay, so let's see. Go over here, and we want to type in 45. And you see that then it was less than 50, and it changes the color. And also, if we take a look at the general over here, it's also designated as read-only, meaning someone cannot exercise any kind of data change in that field. They can't access that field. So this concludes taking a look at all the different options that you have in text fields. We went through general, appearance, position options, the actions choices, the format and validate tabs that let you add custom JavaScripts, and the 3 methods of calculations. There's quite a bit to text fields, and I hope that this video has helped you understand some things that maybe you didn't have a handle on before. I do have 3 files I am uploading to my server that you can download. This file right here that has these 3 pages, you can see that I have all 3 of these pages here. This one is uploaded to my server. In addition to that, I have a sample claim form here. And in this claim form, I have a submit button. And let me show you what that submit button does. I've got actions. I have a JavaScript and a submit form action. Now, with the submit form action, I really haven't specified any mail to option here. In other words, this is not going to be submitted. You have to put an email address in here if you want to submit this form. But I do have this JavaScript, and this JavaScript is basically that same JavaScript that I showed you earlier that will attach a file to this document. And the file it's going to attach is the 3rd file I'm uploading to my server, which is just a receipt. So basically this just gives you a little understanding. I've got a claim form here, and I filled out all of the fields with the exception of this last field. When I click the button, it's going to ask me to browse my computer and find the receipt form. And so what you do is make sure that when you copy these files to your computer, put all 3 of these PDF documents in the same folder, and it'll be easy for you to locate the file. Okay, so this takes care of adding a little explanation for creating text fields and all of the attribute settings that you have and choices that you can make in the various tabs. Once again, this is Ted Padova wishing you all the very best in your PDF forms creation.